Hello, everyone, and welcome now. Reading the 40 chapters of Exodus during the 40 days of Lent. Today we cross the halfway boundary, or meet the halfway boundary in terms of the chapter quantities, as we will read through chapter number 20. Before I get into today's content, I wanted to address a question or comment, observation that came across my desk yesterday, and it was something I was wondering if anyone would notice. But that is, in the previous chapter 19, there Moses was told to bring the priests up to the mountain. And of course, at this point, we have not read anything with regards to there being a consecrated, separated, and dedicated priesthood here in Exodus. And so it's uncertain. Is the qualification there. It's uncertain. When history is written retrospectively, and it kind of sometimes it expects the reader to know certain things or to be able to fill in the gaps with assumptions. One option is that there was priests selected before they got to the mountain, before they were the priesthood as a sect or an order was delegated. That's certainly possible. You'll remember that with Moses' father-in-law Jethro, encouraging him to organize matters better. Maybe, and of course Jethro himself was a priest, maybe Moses started to order and organize the priesthood, although their exact specifications and details of their job descriptions and vocations were uncertain at that point. Maybe there's something to that. Otherwise, it's unknown, and there are certain other historical literary theories that personally I find less helpful, much more speculative, uncertain, and hardly space to consider each of those in a serious, thoughtful regard. All right, so now chapter number 20. Moses has made his way there to Sinai, and here comes the law, the Decalogue, or as we call it, the 10 Commandments. No gods other than me is the first one, and of course here they are coming out of Egypt, where there was a pantheon of gods. Even in the book of Genesis, Abram leaves his gods and follows after the God that's revealed to him. But yet, with his patriarchal line, like his grandson Jacob and his wives, there's more than one indication there that maybe they're not quite exclusive yet in the God that they're serving. But here in this, remember, this is group formation, group identity. This is something of a founding document for a covenant people and articles of organization. The first thing is there's only one God, and that makes them extraordinarily unique in the ancient Near East context. Okay, the second commandment, do not make idols, essentially. Okay, so it's God is going to be understood as and also as being one, but also in uniqueness to their surrounding culture. There's not going to be this idol, this image, this construct that is going to be worshipped as God. And frankly, going back to Genesis 2, that is because God's covenant people are the ones that are supposed to be in his image or his idol and his likeness. Okay, the third commandment, we'll likely remember it as do not take the Lord's name in vain. And so the name is to be treated sacred and holy. Remember, these are boundary markers, as we discussed yesterday. The fourth commandment is the lengthiest commandment. Not only is it the lengthiest commandment, but it's also the pivot. And the first three commandments is about between God and humanity. The latter 6 commandments are about interpersonal human-to-human relationships. And this fourth commandment is the pivot. It deals between God and humanity, in a sense, humanity to one another. And it's the lengthiest commandment. That there is going to be a Sabbath rest. Coming out of Egypt, remember in Exodus 1 and 2, the echoes recurrently, that Pharaoh worked them harder. And now, in part of their founding documents, their articles of organization, this is going to be in clear contrast to Pharaoh, as these other commandments, some of them are, such as the no other gods. Clear contrast to what they're coming from. God is going to be the one that reveals rest. There's going to be a time for vacation, as it were. In fact, this applies in verse number 10 to your servants and your slaves, even your cattle and travelers that are staying with you, people who are outsiders. Everyone is going to rest. That is going to be the ethic. And it comes back to covenant vocation. In Genesis 2, when God rested, he had organized out of the disorderly. He had taken the chaos of the water and the darkness and transformed it into something that was neat, and with an appropriate functional economy to God's created order. He takes his rest because everything is good. The idea is when everything is good, now God has likewise organized this group of people out of the chaotic elements of Egypt. Then rest could be had because God's created order is functioning appropriately and responsibly. Okay, hurrying up through the rest of this chapter, the honoring of father and mother. Again, this is about the orderly operation of God's society. The prohibition of murder, the prohibition of the adultery, the prohibition on stealing, the prohibition on lying, or more accurately, false witness testifying inaccurately about someone else, or the commandment, the prohibition of covetousness, wanting what belongs to someone else. All of these are what's necessary for God's functional order of operation. Covetousness, and the last one, again, is very pertinent. They're coming out of Egypt where there was a exploitive economy that was motivated by greed, and here their commandment is going to be that to eschew greed. So after these commandments are given, here's this imagery: the lightning and thunder, the sound of a horn, The mountain is smoking. The people see it, that they are afraid. And they said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, or we will die." Moses says, "Don't be afraid. God has come to test you so that you have enough fear of him to keep you from violating these commandments." But they stood far away while Moses came near to the cloud where God was. It's interesting. The people they weren't told to stay far away. They were told to approach the mountain, not touch it, but to approach it. There was going to be a boundary around the mountain, but they were to come near it. And the people are too afraid to come to approach the mountain. Once more, we see Moses and his function as being quite important, necessary, and imperative, as we looked at a couple of days ago, earlier this week, with his raising the arms, giving them the victory in battle. Here, God's human agent here is someone who the people have to learn to trust, because after all, God trusts him. And here, with their fear of God, evidently they're maybe not trusting Moses more, although they're asking him to act as a buffer. But they're afraid of God, and they're wanting someone to stand in between God and humanity. That's an important feature that we'll pick up on in subsequent readings. All right, so to conclude this chapter, God says to Moses, "Say to this people Israel, you have seen for yourselves, I have spoken from heaven. Do not make any other gods. Do not make gods of silver and gold. Make an altar of earth for me, and give your burnt and peace gifts, and worship your sheep and cattle. Every place where my name is to be remembered, I will come to you. I will bring you good. If you make an altar of stone, do not build it of cut stones. For if you use an object to cut it, it will be unclean. And do not go up to the steps to my altar, so no part of your body may be seen without being covered." So the conclusion here is the first prescription for liturgical acts. God does not want idols. That's very clear. It's very different than Egypt. What he wants is sacrifice instead. Holy places, shrines, as it were, with these altars where people bring their gifts. What's the significance of gifts? It's not that God needs anything that the people are bringing him, but I think when the people sacrifice, what they are showing is not only that everything belongs to God, but also is the antithesis of the environment of Egypt, where everything was about greedy, covetous behavior, about trying to collect more, and God is calling them to surrender or sacrifice more. All right, so we're well into this video. I'll stop here and meet you again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining with me in this first half of Exodus, and I hope you have found it fulfilling and rewarding.